Jon, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Emma, it's great to be back with you. It's a pleasure.
This has been such a valuable series, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback, a lot of good questions, and I'm really excited to have you back to continue this conversation because each time it's not that somebody can't listen to an episode without hearing the prior episodes, but really they're sort of designed to slightly build on each other, and the knowledge base gets a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, and this has just been a really incredible series to do with you. So I thought we would start with a question that was asked on one of your episodes and something that I actually realized hasn't been talked about from a therapist perspective or from the perspective of maybe healing in a sense of doing that alongside somebody and how it can benefit. So I thought from your perspective, we would go into journaling and how a survivor or somebody dealing with trauma might use journaling, how they should use journaling, and how it can help in a therapeutic setting from your perspective. So I'll turn this over to you and we'll start here.
Well, there's a great question and great topic. And yeah, we've had a couple of folks inquire about that. There is, in my estimation, there is nothing more important than journaling for a survivor, really for any of us. But the work that is done outside of session will be done in journaling. If if a client doesn't take the time, and it doesn't mean shame on them, it just means here's the reality. Because there really aren't any masochists, right? The person, somebody just said, "Well, I go to the dentist and don't have Novocaine." Okay, so I guess I've heard from one person, but all things being equal, we shy away from pain. Why? Because we're normal. Doing deep reparative work when it comes to trauma, when it comes to getting in touch with pain, unless I purpose to do that, right? I'm not going to ease into it. I have to force myself into the pain. Um, think of like an in-ground or a built-in swimming pool. You've got the shallow end and you've got the deep end. To experience pain means you've experienced pain. Now the question is how much and how intense. But nobody gets through going into the pool of pain and getting out without purposefully walking through the process. Why? Because it's painful. So there is a part of me, if I'm normal, I will push down or I will shove away. I liken it to a trap door or a closet, right? I'm gonna push my pain away. I'm going to separate myself. I'm going to dissociate by degree. If, as a matter of fact, there was a song, it's just kind of sung back in the 70s. Heinz Ketchup used to use this for a commercial. No, was it? No, it wouldn't be Heinz Ketchup. Sorry. Like Bayer aspirin or something. Maybe Aleve or something. I think Carly Simon, I haven't got time for the pain. It wasn't Heinz Ketchup. What am I talking about? Okay, it's a good thing we're taping this live, so to speak. Okay, so it was some sort of pain medication. There it is. All right. So I'll never forget that chorus. I haven't got time for the pain. So that is, we all identify with that, whether physical pain. So ketchup. What am I talking about? Okay. So it was some sort of like a leave or something. I forget. Somebody can write in and tell me what that is. So I don't have time for the pain and I don't want the pain. I don't want to. So we will do something with it. We'll put it somewhere so we can get on with life. Because we also want to believe that time heals all wounds, heals superficial wounds, but anything deeper than that, it doesn't. So I have to face the fact that I have to do the work. So the question is, what is the most effective work in between session or sessions? Because sessions really are a focal point, but it's 1 or 2 hours. I recommend 2 hours. I just don't think, yeah, especially at the beginning. So for the first couple of years, and if somebody is a survivor, you have to be prepared for a couple of years in therapy. It's just the reality. Okay, if you went through a whole lot of stuff, just prepare for a couple of years. Okay, it's going to take potentially a year to 2 years just to come out of what we're going to talk about, is come out of denial, come out of starting to understand and recognize that you dissociate and what's under that. And that's what we're talking about after this, the question we're going to answer. Uh, so the work is done in between sessions. And I recommend if you're starting out, you need at least 2 sessions of 2 hours, so twice a week at a minimum. Yeah, because it's too intensive. Why? Because the gains you make, which really is truth coming to the surface, will be snatched away with anything less than that. After a couple of years, you can begin to dial it back a little bit. But if you do 1 hour once a week and you're a survivor and you have parts, it's just not going to be effective. It's better than nothing, but at the same time, it may not be because it'll stir stuff up. So you need to be this dedicated, meaning you need to be prepared. And it can be very expensive. So find a therapist that is willing to work with you. I typically give about $25,000 of free counseling away per year, meaning extra sessions, because it's very hard for survivors to maintain a job or to be able to continue on in employment. A therapist needs to work, but if a therapist is working with survivors, there's a balance. So I've heard of too many therapists that once insurance is done, they won't work with the client anymore. Oh, yeah, it's pathetic. Also, psych hospitals. It used to be in the 80s and 90s that once a patient ran out of insurance, they kick them out. So the suicide rate increases. So, okay. So with journaling. Um, Journaling will be the means to continue what just took place in session. And if you have parts, it is essential, and trust me, as you've been traumatized, especially through sexual abuse as a kid, and you have parts, the entire goal of therapy is for all of you to be on the same page. Well, you're never going to be on the same page if I'll do bullet points A, B, right? You're never going to be on the same page if A, you don't recognize you have parts or you're denying it. B, if you don't get to know those parts, and that is, so C, and that's what we've been talking about, and we'll go into that a little bit more now here in a moment. If you don't earn their trust, C or D, and if you don't start mediating between the parts, and then if you don't do a deep dive into those parts that are trying to keep you away from your memories, you have to gain their trust and you have to align yourself with them. You have to work with them. And then you have to be prepared to get your memories back. You're not going to do this by accident. Why? Because it's all painful. So, journaling is the means of facilitating this journey. And depending upon the different stages that you're at, there's going to be different kinds of journaling that will be produced. If you're in the first stage, it will be you finding out whether or not you actually have parts or alters. They'll communicate with you if you really want to know. But if you don't really want to know, you can't fool them because they know what you're thinking. They can read your mind. Kind of an interesting way of putting it, but they can read your mind. So if you aren't serious about it, now it doesn't mean that every single part, but all things being equal, do you want to know? And we've covered that. So the first aspect of journaling will be that investigative work. Who's there? Is anybody there? Then the next will be beginning that and continuing that ongoing dialogue, starting to get to know them, and then everybody's roles. Eventually, it's going to elicit the memories. And in IFS, they talk about storming the gates, meaning as you start to trust your therapist, eventually a memory is going to come up that will surprise everybody because you kind of skipped a level, but that's a normal thing. And that's actually a good thing. That means they're starting to sense hope. And when that memory comes up, if you don't have it in writing, not just the memory in session, but memories that will start to come up, the dreams you're having, the flashbacks you're having, the things you're doing in the bathroom, the things you're doing in the kitchen to yourself, um, nearly breaking your knuckles. You're taking a knife and you're stabbing yourself. You're pouring scalding hot water on yourself. You have to journal about that too. Why? Because the therapist needs to know. So you need to journal so that parts of you can communicate with you. And then with your journal, you want to take that into session and you want to read it. That becomes key material to work with because the parts that are disclosing want you to talk about it or they wouldn't disclose. So that will prevent the session from not going anywhere. And that'll help the therapist because we therapists can't read your mind. And how many times have, and I don't fault any survivor, but how many times has a session kind of gone like this? Well, how you doing? Oh, well, what's going on? Oh, nothing. Well, how's work going? No, it's okay. Okay. With all due respect, you know you're wasting session time. You've got 55 minutes, 50 minutes, it's therapeutic hour. And by the way, I want to challenge each client with all due respect. Come prepared to get into stuff. Why? Because what's normal is you're going to save it for the last 15 minutes and then the last 5 minutes. And now two things have happened. You've just finally said what you were debating the entire session to say. You've gotten to the most crucial. This is very normal, by the way, but this will help kind of up people's own investment in therapy. You might as well come out with it so that you can process that. And here's from a therapist perspective, here's something that if you want to give a gift to your therapist, you be responsible for ending the session on time. The therapist is doing a job. Do you know that a therapist actually has to go to the washroom or restroom, use a toilet in between sessions? And the next client is waiting out in the waiting room or waiting on the phone. So if you as a client go beyond the 50 minutes, guess what you're doing? You're playing upon his kindness. And if you take it to a full hour, now what's he supposed to do in between sessions? Now he's got to run to the bathroom, run and get a cup of coffee, and it's already eaten into the next client's session. Oftentimes, clients with, I didn't intend to talk about this, but hopefully, I'm being real here. Okay. Um, a therapist has a degree of responsibility, but I'll tell you what, bless my clients that are conscientious. Because if a client cares, what happens if somebody's just disclosed a horrific thing 5 minutes before session? What am I supposed to do with that? Now, I'm not asking a client to feel badly, but put yourself in your therapist's shoes. You've just talked about something that you could have brought up at the beginning. And now the therapist actually has to, 5 minutes into the deal, the real important stuff, I, as a therapist, have to stop you. That feels horrible. I've been doing this for 30 years. So actively participate in your own therapy. So that means get to the stuff. Now, there's always going to be a normal lead in, but you will shortchange yourself if you don't sooner rather than later within 15 minutes. So come out with it. And that's where the journal can help. Okay, so journaling means you come into session, you've been communicating depending upon the stage that you're at. Um, and then the therapist can begin to dialogue with you about that. And sometimes the parts will have something to say to the therapist. And sometimes this actually somewhat more times than not, you won't remember what's down there, and now you're going to be reading it. And sometimes it's effective not to read what's down there ahead of time. And you will actually hear yourself read something that you didn't remember writing, and that will shock you because a part is now disclosing something. And that's progress. So that gives a therapist good information to work with. You are actively still moving things along in between sessions. And then I recommend this. I recommend have two journals going on. Now, your therapist has to be okay with this. Not every therapist is, but what I do with some clients is in between sessions. So if it's an in-person session, I have them give me that journal, meaning they hand it to me, and then I'm going to write comments that will sort of springboard the person on. I'm going to sort of prompt additional thought. And then next session, I'm going to give it back to them. That will mean you actually will have two journals going at the same time. So then the client can take that journal back, and they're not only going to continue to journal, but now I've asked them different questions. So if a part has come up and said, I don't like it when um, I don't like it when Sally goes to bars because she's picking up on men and I don't want men to touch me. Okay, that's important because that not only means you got conflict going on the inside, but now you've got disclosure and now Sally's going to hate it. But it's important because now Sally gets to explain what's going on. And so now you've got good material that can be used not only in group, but as the therapist then writes down different questions, you can actually, so let's say Tina just disclosed, let's say the 6-year-old just disclosed that she doesn't like it when Sally goes to the bars. Sally or Mary has never disclosed, so the core person has never disclosed that she's going to bars or going down to the firehouse visiting firemen, and she's married. Okay, that's pretty important because she's jeopardizing her marriage. But Sally's not married, so she thinks. Sally takes her wedding ring off. Sally doesn't even know what that ring is. Why does she have that ring? She's not married. So it's really important for also practical reasons, because if Mary's husband catches on that she's going down to the fire hall, her marriage might be over. So there's a lot of different reasons why that journaling can be beneficial, but it keeps the flow, it keeps the process going. So journaling then is between the parts, the client and the parts, and then to be able to have the therapist respond and give feedback. If it's online, selectively with a couple of clients, I will have them give me updates throughout the week in email form. Now you have to risk believing, you have to have the trust level, you have to risk believing that the therapist is going to keep these confidential. One other thing that's important, the reason why you want to journal, and drawing is an important part, especially for SRA victims and MK Ultra, but SRA. Different things are going to come up, and oftentimes drawing will be very effective. And you will have scenes, scenarios that will come out. What I recommend for each client is you take a picture of that and you give it to your therapist for safekeeping, because there will be a point in time in therapy where a certain part or alter will try to destroy journals. That's what happened with Sybil. They'll recant. Why? Because it's getting too close. So if I have a picture, a copy for safekeeping, then if and when a journal gets burned, it's trashed, they'll hide them. Different parts will hide them in the most unlikely spots. And the person can't find their journal. Oh, yeah. One found it up under the sink, the bathroom sink, with stuff piled on top of it and magazines.
Oh my gosh.
But she was looking for it, couldn't find it. Then all of a sudden came across it. Now the question is, why didn't they just get rid of it? So you see the internal conflict. They didn't want to get rid of it in that particular case, but they got rid of another one. And that's where we will, as we continue to look at the different kinds of alters, the different layers or levels, but it's really invaluable. So one of the clients that I'm working with right now, I think they got rid of either one or two journals. Well, I have drawings, and meaning she sent them over to me, and also copies of pages. And the part of her that burned the journals, it drives that part crazy that I have it. Why? Because every now and then I'm going to show that part, the picture, and it helps break down the denial. And then we can talk about, and so you have to use it judiciously, right? Because if it's too much of a shock to the system, then it doesn't do any good. However many times somebody sees something that they've drawn or they've written. That's why I'm not in favor of hypnosis. Because if it's going to come up, it's going to come up. But little by little, to be able to, even if I have it in my hand and the client knows. As a matter of fact, and just a couple of days ago with the client, I sent her a picture, just something that I know that happened to her based upon what she disclosed. And so it's a generic picture of that. Something was used on her. And so I cut and pasted that and sent it to her, prepping her, saying, parts of your body are going numb. Open this up. I said, it's not really horrific in the sense that if somebody else saw it, they would be curious. It's not out of the ordinary. Not every day you see a picture, but it's just a simple picture off of, do a Google search. But it's not every day that somebody would see this type of, actually had to do with wrist restraints because her wrists and her ankles go numb. And so as a child, if something's happening to you, you're going to be pulling. So the body memory is bringing that back. So in journaling, I have that information and I can actually encourage her that if she wants to progress through therapy, to go back and read what she's written to me. So there's a lot of benefits, a lot of important things about journaling. That was a rather long, I tried to keep that answer short, but
No, that was
so
great. This is something I think too that gets maybe underestimated in healing when you have somebody next to you too going through the journey. I think it's really important to be able to share somehow with people that you love and trust, and that can be a really hard thing for survivors to talk about sometimes, and being able to share something like that with your therapist, being able to hand that off to a loved one or a partner, and be able to communicate that way, I think it's beautiful, and also with the new project that I'm doing, I was telling you before we started recording with submitting testimonies for a book. I was really excited that you were going to talk about this a little bit today because I think for some people, even on my channel that are listening, they're going to be sort of maybe journaling or constructing a narrative about their story for the first time. And I think that this is really valuable to sort of see how it can benefit you in a healing manner, how it can benefit you clinically, and again, what to expect whenever you go to therapy and how to sort of, in my opinion, evaluate therapists. I mean, what would you say to somebody, and you don't have to give a super in-depth answer, but what if a therapist doesn't ask somebody to journal? Is that something that the patient should suggest, or should that sort of
absolutely,
be a
yes.
requirement that somebody looks for in a therapist, that, hey, if they don't suggest journaling or want to share that with me, then I shouldn't maybe work with them?
Yeah, I think if a therapist doesn't value it, then it may be that you want to find a therapist that does. For me, there's nothing more important than journaling. Why? Because that's going to be the material. Um, Maybe to qualify what I said previously, it's very normal for the first 10 or 15 minutes is going to be sort of catching up. So how I do a session, as a matter of fact, this may be helpful. right? The client comes in. I do my sessions remotely. So a little bit different, kind of as we're doing right now. So it's not quite the same, but I tell you what, there's a lot of benefit to it as well. Because she's in her home, comfortable, and that. So what I do is I check in. I have my own checklist that I go through in the here and now. How was work? Talk to me about your week. How was work? Your family? Um, Anything out of the ordinary? How are you sleeping? How are you eating? And then because I know she has certain compulsions, which are ways of channeling intensity, really it's anger, but she still isn't able to appreciate that yet because anger scares her. Um, I will ask her certain things, like, tell me what you've done in the kitchen. But because I know certain things, like she'll harm herself in the kitchen, in the bathroom. She won't always sleep in her bed. There's places in her bedroom that she will sleep, and that's indicative of depending upon the time of, as a matter of fact, that coincides with the satanic calendar. And because I have a copy of the satanic calendar, and if anybody wants it, you can Google it. And that in and of itself can begin to, so not only can I anticipate, so if a therapist works with SRA victims, they need to know there's a satanic calendar. Why? Because the parts know. That's why the holidays, especially Christmas, so starting in the fall, right either the beginning or middle, certainly by no later the middle of October to just past January 1st. Then it's February 2nd. Then there's just, these perps have ruined every holiday. And on top of it, so they also ruin regular national holidays. And
Birthdays.
so everyone, right? So I go through the checklist of these things. How are you doing? And so it'll be work, how's family? Have you heard from, in this case, unfortunately, a family member, I believe, was one of the architects or facilitated, but a part of her is still in relationship with that. Um, so over the holidays, guess who she had to be around? And then it'll be um, any romantic, anything going on as far as dating. If she's dating somebody, how's that going? So you can imagine and then I'll ask uh, as far as the compulsions. Okay, so that'll take about 20 minutes, 25 minutes in there. But as I start to ask about the compulsions, now it's priming things. And I don't do it purposely, but it makes sense. If you're having to say, yeah, I did it again, I almost broke my hand again, or whatever it is, self-inflicted. Now it makes sense. You're going to go into the journal because what's going on as far as the self-inflicted injury or self-injurious behavior, two things. It's channeling off, every client needs to know this, by the way. All of your self-inflicted um, activity is twofold. One, part of you is obeying those that you no longer should obey. So you're continuing because you believe it's still necessary. And the other is channeling off rage. For now, we'll just say anxiety, which is adrenaline. Okay, so any self-injurious behavior is channeling off intensity. And quite frankly, that intensity is anger on a scale of 1 to 10. It's level 10, whatever adjective you want to use. And the key to healing is anger, as I mentioned before. So journaling then is so crucial because after I, as a therapist, go through that checklist, because I also know, no client wants to come in and say, okay, let me tell you what just happened. It's just not going to happen. So I need to be careful how I framed it originally, right? I don't want a client to say, oh gosh, I've got to jump into things within 5 minutes. No, but don't save it for the last 5 minutes. It's very, very common. As a matter of fact, the most common thing is about 40 minutes of session will be fluff out of a 50-minute session. So look how much time you could have spent. And that's where journaling. So it's such a relief because we therapists, if somebody keeps saying, I don't know, well, what's a therapist supposed to do with that? How do you think? I don't know. And if you don't give us anything to work with, but if you say, you know what, I've got my journal. And so the one of the clients that I'm working with, it's beautiful. She says, as I'm starting to go, she says, can we do the journal? So that's beautiful as well, because maybe I'm starting to get close to something. But I know also then in the journal, there's going to be a connection with what I just, if she says, let's do the journal, that means the journal's preferable to what I'm starting to ask. But it'll all tie. So journaling is there's nothing more profitable for your own treatment work than therapy. I'm sorry, journaling. And journaling is self-therapy. There you go.
Yes, and that's the other thing. It's not just benefiting because you're able to build a relationship with your therapist, hold yourself and the different parts of you accountable, and again, get to know them. But that is a way of actually healing. So it has so many different benefits of why it's really good to use your hand and create art or get it out on your hand somehow through your hand on paper, whether that's drawing and especially journaling, just to have a different way to process emotions. It uses a different part of the brain. It's a lot more calming to write too than it is to talk about stuff. It settles the nervous system a little bit more, and it's definitely a really healing way to go through just your own processes, therapist or not. Every survivor should be journaling regardless. And I think for what you do, I commend you for knowing what the satanic calendar is and paying attention to that with clients, and holding your clients accountable for journaling, understanding these benefits, and also like you said, it really helps you as a therapist. So I commend you, Jon. The work that you do is really innovative for a therapist, and I think it's going to pave the way in the future for others to learn from you.
Good. Well, I appreciate that. And one of the other benefits when it has to do with parts, each part has a unique style of handwriting, and it will be very consistent. If you do two journals, what's powerful about that, if your therapist is willing to do that, and as a therapist, if I'm talking to another therapist and you're working with survivors, you're working with our SRA victims or MK Ultra, you need to spend additional time. Doesn't take a lot of time, but if your heart's not in this, then don't do that. So I challenge any other therapist working with a survivor, if they say, well, no, after the session, it's boundaries, you know what, get real. Honestly, just get real. I understand about boundaries. This is not normal therapy. This is like being a trauma physician in the ER. If you want to do family practice, stick with normal therapy. But if you're a therapist working with survivors, either stop doing it or get prepared to be reasonable, right? And okay, so if there's some boundary issues, you address those. But if you want to help somebody heal, this is not normal therapy. This is intensive. It is trauma. It's combat. It's like being a medic, right? It's being a combat surgeon. So it's just different. It's not neat and clean. And I have a family. It's not like being a podiatrist, 9 to 5. And I have, okay, if you want a neat, choose a different population to work with. So there you go. That's my admonition for a therapist, right? There's a difference between boundaries versus this is different, right? This is trauma work. So there we go. If I've chastised any of my fellow therapists, good. And they can write to me, right? They
They
can
need to
write
be
to me.
challenged. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They
Yes.
can
And
write
you
to
do
me.
make yourself available. And,
Yeah,
as you found, the track record of people wanting to debate you on things that they're not happy with is zero, always.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So, well, hopefully that'll answer or help the person or the couple of folks that wrote about journaling. So, shall
That's
we get into, we'll
wonderful.
pick up where we left off.
Let's do it.
Should we
Yes.
do that? Okay. So, Emma, I will share the screen.
I'm so excited for this. I know you've done some upgrades to this.
We've got some upgrades, and I'm very aware that I told people previously as I was describing the chart that don't worry, I'll make it bigger, and I never did. So now I'm going to be mindful. What we have in front of us is, or what we have in front of you, the audience, is my kind of conceptual look at the overall system of anybody's system. Okay, everybody's going to be different, but generally speaking, there are some pretty predictable structural aspects to somebody that has parts or somebody that has alters so that you can understand the work. You're going to be working, both the client and the therapist, you're going to be working from the top down so that you can see this is not going to be solved. I mean, this is not going to be done in a month or two. Okay, you got a lot of work, and each one of these could represent 5 to 10 alters or parts, each circle. So I've just tried to boil it down to kind of the bare essence of what somebody can anticipate. So if you're the client, welcome to your world. As far as SRA or MK Ultra, okay. But still, the concept will apply if somebody went through fairly significant physical abuse. But this really picture is a picture of somebody's inner world that's gone through sadistic sexual abuse. Okay. So for a
Amazing.
therapist, this is sort of what you're dealing with, and the goal will be top down. But as you're moving downward, there will be parts, and we'll call this little one Tina, call her a 6-year-old, who will, like a little linebacker, will break through the line and go for the touchdown. So IFS calls that storming the gates. Down at this lower level, we'll start with top down, but down at this lower level, these are the parts that actually remember the abuse.
Are you able to make it just a little bit bigger, John?
Yes, as a matter of fact, okay. So sorry about that. There we are.
It's okay,
Okay.
cool.
You know what? Let me start with the top down view, and then we'll go into details. So thank you, Emma. So again, I'm going to go out just for a second so people can see kind of how big this is. Sorry. And I dropped my mouse. Hold on. Any questions? Oh,
No, I would just want to comment, thank you for putting this together. I know this must have been a lot of work for
there we
you.
are.
And I really like the upgrades are really cool. Everybody has a name now.
We got names. That's right. That's right.
This
Okay,
looks
so here we go. I'm all prepared here. Eminent professional.
you're doing
Okay,
great.
so I'm gonna do this. I don't know. Okay, let me move this. I don't know if that moves it. Am I repositioning it on the screen?
Yeah, it's like a little bit more centered now.
Oh, there we go. There we go. It's important to be centered. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, so what you have is we'll just take the large view, then we're going to zoom in ultimately still on the top parts. Okay, so look at the yellow right there. So we have our own conscious awareness. So who is that? It's you. It's us right now. As you're listening to this, you're consciously aware. Then there's what's called the co-conscious part. Those are the parts just under the surface that you hear, that the survivor hears in their head. The subconscious are the parts that are going to break through that are very powerful, that you also will hear in your head. Okay, so if you look at the blue, we've got 3 different kind of differentiations of colors. Okay, that's going to be pretty much in the everyday. As you have either lived your life, or actually, it's true, as you've lived your life, but especially as you begin to do this work, you're going to encounter some very powerful parts of you that will step in, and they will step in to stop things, to stop things in their tracks. Okay, that's the red level right there. So the repressed parts. In the yellow, it's called unconscious or amnesic roles. I think right there, IFS, when they talk about firefighters. So in IFS terms, we have up here the managers, the firefighters, and then at the bottom in the green, that's what they call the exiles. So these are the very young parts, we could say the child within, that actually have memories. Okay, the top parts don't have the memories from childhood. and then you have the core person. Okay, so ultimately, the goal is to reconnect with those wounded parts, those childlike parts, and then, if possible, and I do believe it's possible, but sometimes it's very difficult to connect with the core part because usually that core part is going to be very young. I'm going to move it this way just so we can start to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to enlarge this now. Maybe not too large. Okay. Okay. So where we left off last time, quite frankly, was we were looking at the two top levels. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can, I don't want to distract us. So I'm going to, nope, sorry. Uh, I'll see if I can multitask here. There we go. I'm just, I'm pretty good at drawing text boxes. So that's what I do. So let me see here if I can draw a text box just so we can focus everybody's attention. There we go. Okay. So last time we talked about what goes on in the everyday. For someone that has parts, they will experience without being aware of it, they will experience um, dissociating. Okay, they will experience times where they forget. And we talked in detail, or at least a fair overview, how it's not so much. So we're going to call her Mary. Mary is the one that would set the session. Mary is that's her given name. Okay, so as we see on documents, she will write Mary and then whatever her last name is. So when you go to session, this is you. Or actually, it could be the other parts, but people know you as Mary. What others aren't aware, but they may be even more aware than you because they will see throughout the day a change in you. But sometimes, oh, sorry, hold on, that's a big change. Let me bring her over here. Okay, so Mary was tasked with doing a job. As we mentioned last time, she got overwhelmed at work and pressure started coming on at 3 o'clock, or somebody did something, she got triggered. So either through pressure or something happened or somebody just did something. So before Mary knows it, Mary got pulled in. I used to believe that Mary would sort of duck in or would would go away. It's still not a bad term, but I think it's more accurate to say now that it's not so much that Mary goes away, but I think that the best way to view it is that a part will step in and will pull Mary away. When that happens, Mary's conscious awareness, or think about you're writing a sentence and you do a parentheses, okay? When that switching takes place, now there's a parentheses. And the last thing Mary remembered was the last word literally spoken. So if it's 3 o'clock or 3:05, and that's when she got triggered, at 3:05, Mary gets pulled in, Robin comes out. Mary's time frame stopped at 3:05. So that's the last thing that Mary remembers. Robin is fairly close, shall we say, in gradation or shades of personality, because Mary is very responsible. Oh, there we go. So Mary's the primary responsible part. Robin is very detailed. You have another part that either will play tag team depending upon their strength. Now, you notice the one thing that's consistent is Mary is sort of out of the picture for right now, meaning her conscious awareness. My computer is going to catch up. Okay, so Stephanie and Robin are now tag teaming. So it may be that, yeah, let's say that Robin starts and now either one of them starts. Okay, but both of them are working on the report. They're doing the task, whatever that task is. In the midst of that, let's say somebody asks Brenda for help or somebody is in need. They round the corner, they ask Mary. Remember, because the body looks like who? The body, everybody knows Mary by Mary. So when they round the corner and they're talking to the body, they think it's Mary, but instead, what happens? So Stephanie's working on the project. Somebody comes around, or let's say Stephanie is in the office Stephanie uh, needs something from, let's see, the office clerk. So yeah, so Stephanie rounds the corner because she's got to get her job done, and suddenly she sees the clerk in distress or overwhelmed herself. Well, all of a sudden, a helpful part will come out. Even though Stephanie doesn't have the time, maybe Brenda is lending a listening ear. So the clerk is talking to Mary's body, but she doesn't know that she's talking to Brenda because actually Mary's under pressure, right? So Brenda, though, is able to carve out time and be helpful. But meanwhile, Robin, so stress is increasing. Okay. So just as soon as Brenda is done being helpful, all of a sudden, now they switch and maybe Stephanie pulls Brenda back. Oftentimes it's if something is building within the altar or the part, that's what's going to allow them to pull the other one in. Okay, so it's not so much as I believe now, it's not so much that Stephanie decides to step back, could be, and each person will actually have to determine that for themselves. Is it that they step back or is it feeling like they get pulled within? Okay. So now we have the helpful one. But again, now they're working on the report at work. Um, now, so let's say the report, I think that's the scenario we gave last time at 5 o'clock. The report was due at 5 o'clock. And with the help of our computer, with the help of Robin and Stephanie, Mary, oh, there we go. Mary, so these two are the champions, right? They did it. Um, they got the job done, and at 5 o'clock or 4:55, they walk into the office, drop it in the box or the boss's desk. Okay. And now pressure is decreased and Mary comes back out. Mary sits at her desk, and before you know it, Mary looks at the clock and she's now a little concerned because it's 5 o'clock. Oh my gosh, did I do the report? But let's say, somehow she knows she finished the report. So she goes, oh, I don't know how I got it done, but wow, okay. And about that time, darkens her door in her office. Somebody says, hey, we girls, we're going out for a drink, or we're going out for, do you want to come with us? Well, you now have a little stress because we have dutiful Stephanie. Maybe she's dating somebody or she promised her mother. I mean, she's supposed to do something after work. But because all work and no play makes Johnny a dull, right? All of a sudden, Amy says, "You know what? I'm tired of it. I just want to what? I just want to be able to play." So somebody's rounded the corner, asks Mary, "Do you want to join us?" And it could be join us for anything. And Mary's about ready. Mary first declines, and then the coworker or friend says, "Oh, come on." And now all of a sudden, real fast, we've got internal, we talked about before, but we used our little, let me get our lines of communication here, right? We used this before. I don't know if I can draw this. There we are. Okay. So we had our lines of communication. I will just, we'll just make this, how about pink? Why not? Now let me make this large so we can see it. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. And we've got an arrow going. So we have communication, all of a sudden, a lot of communication real fast. Mary's just been invited out for some fun, but she promised, again, I'll make this, she promised her mother that she would stop by after work because that's what she's supposed to do every day. Because even though there's other brothers and sisters, somehow Mary is responsible to be the one to take care, right? She's a caretaker. So somebody comes in, says, hey, Mary, you want to go out for a movie or drink or whatever? The dutiful one is saying, no, 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 we can't do it. So she's starting to apply guilt. And where? That's going to be in Mary's head. Okay. But then all of a sudden, who also is starting, right? We got the playful one saying, yeah, you know what? It's time. And so now we may have a debate going on back and forth. And then you also can have crosstalk between these two. Um, and so, depending upon who wins out, it may be that Amy wins out. And before you know it, guess who has responded, right? Amy has responded for everybody. And now, as soon as the person says, okay, fine, we'll see you in a half hour, now Amy's excited, but now Stephanie's going, oh my gosh. And Mary's going, what just happened? How did I end up saying this? Okay, now that's just one scenario. It could be that we have somebody offensive that came up, and who might step in? We have, of course, and we talked about this last time, Dana. Dana is defensive and aggressive, meaning she has an itchy trigger finger. She's pretty fast if she needs to speak her mind. And you can see, right? So all of a sudden, if it's somebody that wants to critique her real fast, critique Mary, then all of a sudden you will have the angry one that comes out. And then before you know it, um, Dana has put them in their place, or maybe Dana is driving and Dana flips somebody off. And then Dana also will be in Mary's head, so to speak, right? Saying, why do you let them treat you that way? You never, if it weren't for me, you're just a doormat. Okay. Now what'll happen is, as a matter of fact, somebody is talking to Mary, being offensive or putting the full court press as far as pressure. And Dana is starting to build as far as, right? She's starting to vibrate with the adrenaline. She's getting angry and she's in her ear. But then Annie, anxious Annie, I had to, right? Anxious Annie is going, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't say, oh, what are people, right? And then maybe Tanya is very submissive. She said, "Oh, no, you can't say it. You got to keep it to yourself." And so you could have, if somebody's being offensive or pressuring Mary, you could have three going on at any point in time. This is all day. So these two levels are current day. So I'll get rid of the arrow here. So if this is really one of the first places that you start to find out, do you have parts? The reason why journaling is important is you are going to begin to find out if you have parts. So the first level on every day, you've got parts of you that are very much aware, and they are more aware of you than you are of them. And this is that cross talking that you've been hearing all the time, or the direct talking to you. These are the voices that you have been afraid to tell anybody about. You think it's synonymous with being crazy, which it's not, by the way. Okay, so this is your daily life. And until somebody begins to really think through that this is more than just negative self-talk. Okay, this is very real. If you really went through some very traumatic abuse, you may actually see them on the inside. Okay, so the first level is to find out, what do you experience? And so this is going to be the first place that you start, especially with journaling. As a matter of fact, right now, if you're listening to this, again, write a question in a journal that asks, what does anybody think about what Jon just described? As a matter of fact, and also there may be parts that don't really fit that say, you know what, Jon, you missed a circle. That would be a great thing to ask. Does anybody else have anything to add? So there may be an additional part that comes in. Okay, so this is your everyday. These voices are not crazy. Now, they may be driving you crazy, right? But it does not mean that you're crazy. We covered this in the past. Here's a couple quick checklist items to know that you're not crazy. Crazy people are not concerned and do not fear being crazy if they disclose about voices. Okay. So the fact that you have been hesitant to tell anybody about the voices means you're not crazy. Crazy people hear voices from the outside in. They're being broadcast from the TV. They're being broadcast from the 5G tower. And I'm not minimizing some of the the electronic stuff. But all things being equal, think about why crazy people wear tinfoil hats, the mothership overhead. Okay, that's very different. So if you are scared that somebody might think you're crazy, the good news is you're not crazy. This is more than negative self-talk. This is more than you have almost a recording of your mother or father's voice with their voice inflection. Okay. And this is not demon possession, but you may have experienced stuff that has left you wondering because there are going to be times, and oftentimes, you are going to experience the next level depending upon stress. So these two parts are what you live with every day. If you want to know how your day went and you can't recall, all of these parts have your normal everyday day. So if you could tap into each of those parts, you'll pretty much have a sense of how every normal day goes. Okay, so there is an interchange all the time going on uh, between you and your primary parts. If you find yourself, especially for women, if you find yourself running late because you change your clothes a lot and change your hairstyle before work, this is what's going on. Okay. Um, if you're a guy and you see items out of place, this is what's going on. Um, if people have told you, and this is true for anyone, if you seem like you change up a lot, this is what's going on. Okay. So this is your everyday life. And this is where you start. You have to begin to get to know them. And there's nothing better than journaling. So even tonight or today, after you listen to this, at some point in time before the day is over, get a notebook and write a question. And the question would be, what did anybody think about what Jon said about this chart? And then put the journal away, put the piece of paper away, come back in about 3 days and see if there's anything written there. But if the primary part, if you way down deep inside don't want this to be true, do you really think they, your parts, are going to respond to you? No, because why are they here? They're here to keep you functional. But if by them disclosing that they're here is going to cause you consternation and make you non functional, guess who has to pick up the slack? Right? So they're not going to do you and them a disservice. So it's you starting to find out that each one is there. You're going to find out how many primary parts you have. That's going to take a while. Okay. It could take a number of weeks. You will hear from one or two or three or four, typically. For starters, you may just hear from one. Okay. They're going to test to see, do you really want to know? You may hear from two or three. What will it look like? You're going to see different styles of handwriting. Each of them have different styles of handwriting. Some will be right-handed, some will be left, and they will be consistent. Invite them to write their name. Now, it doesn't have to be a person's name. It can be myself. It can be me. It can be anything, whatever they're comfortable with. But oftentimes they will have a name. Did I put, you know what? Now, I didn't add any male names. I'll tell you why. Okay. There could be a male name, but I'll tell you typically if you're female. Okay. If you're male, you're going to have more male names. But if you're a female, you're going to have more female names. Where the male names come in is the next level. So now we're going to notice it's blue because this is still the everyday. But I would say this is not so much every single day, but throughout the week. Certainly throughout, absolutely throughout the month. Okay. So the first two levels, here's you up here. We're going to call you Mary. You know, Mary comes in for session. So the conscious awareness and co-conscious, this is every day. This is what you live with all the time. When you've been through something more stressful, either unanticipated or anticipated, how about Mother's Day? Hello. How about the holidays? And thinking about what Emma and I talked about the um, satanic calendars. So different days, different times, different seasons. When it comes to those, you are now going to can be connecting with your subconscious level. The those that are more powerful, because these are the ones that, so this level, so the suppressed parts. Now we could say both are suppressed, but I'm just differentiating between co-conscious and subconscious. The subconscious parts are not out every single day. Now they could be triggered, but again, that's the matter of fact, that's it. When you get triggered, that's different than maybe mild degrees of stress. Okay, so the everyday stress is where you and your support team come in. But if you really get triggered, now what happens is you're going to be hearing from those parts that are suppressed, the subconscious parts. So there's going to be some parallel. And you notice I tried to kind of differentiate them or parallel them in colors. Okay. So it may still be a little small. So I'm going to increase this, but I wanted you to see just the bigger view. Maybe you can see this. Okay. So let's go to the suppressed parts. And you know what? Oh, hold on. No peeking. All right, where did I go with this? Okay. No, because now we're into this aspect of therapy. Now I'm going to increase it. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Poor little computer's catching up. Okay. So now we're going to think about the times when you get triggered. Okay. But triggered more than just in an ordinary way. Okay. Triggered in a negative way. Okay. So if your report is due, think about that's where Robin, Stephanie came in, but that was anticipated. That's um, the work stuff you have to do. Not that it's not draining, but it's not something that's going to be instantaneously overwhelming. It's going to trigger your adrenal glands above and beyond. Okay. That's where this next level comes in. Now, you notice over on the left here, there's a theme. And what I did is, you notice the white lines. I kind of put these into groupings or categories. Okay. Because within each part, okay, and each of these have names, but there could be multiple parts within that category. Okay. And very often, so I'm circling Brandy right here. You could have maybe 5 very seductive parts. Look at Jimmy. Now you notice Jimmy is right below Dana. Okay. The reason I put, and you notice Jimmy is what gender? Okay. We talked about last time the absolutely abhorrent thing that's happening in the trans movement. Again, trans movement is not real. It's manufactured. Unfortunately, it's now created a real issue. Okay, but can you imagine Jimmy comes out and Jimmy experienced rape as a kid? So Jimmy concludes what any rape survivor would conclude, especially as a kid. If I wasn't a girl, this wouldn't happen to me, and especially if I didn't have breasts. So I want these breasts off of me. So what are greedy doctors willing to do? That gender affirming care, they will make money off of the trauma. Okay. No one will ever heal themselves by chopping off their body parts. You will add insult to injury. You'll add injury to insult. Okay. The goal is to accept all of you, not eradicate parts of you, literally and figuratively. Never chop off your body parts. That is not going to help. Okay. So any doctor, and they know this, any doctor that is making money off of emotionally wounded and disturbed young people or young adults are diabolical. Okay, because they should know the 9 red flag clinical indicators of sexual trauma. Okay, so the answer to all of this is not chopping off body parts. It's getting to know all parts. Okay, do not let anybody sterilize you through cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers when you're young, then chop off your body parts. Don't do it. You are perfect the way you were made. You need to get to know yourself. Okay. But Jimmy is the one, okay, male, right? Every one of us have a wide variety of personality aspects to us. Hopefully, we can tap into all of those. If you have a really macho guy, then what's he has, I just use that term, a really testosterone filled guy. Well, eventually, hopefully, he can learn how to become a little more sensitive, right? He needs to get in touch with his sensitive side a little bit. Um, a guy that's more sensitive, he needs what? He needs to be able to become assertive. Okay. For a woman, same thing. So you don't have to assume you're a guy born in a woman's body. Okay. This is just a part of you that is the protective part. Okay. And that to you, to some part, feels masculine. Okay. So Jimmy and Dana will be sort of close cousins. I use that term loosely, meaning they can identify. But right now, Dana might not be aware of Jimmy, but by the time I see somebody, trust me, Jimmy has broken through. The difference between Dana and Jimmy will be what the degree of triggering, what just happened. If it's anticipated or low level or slowly building, Dana will step in to handle it, will pull Mary out. But let's say, so a coworker's come over or a boss and is starting to run their mouth. Okay. Dana said, you know what? I've had it. So Dana now has pulled Mary in for safekeeping. Mary is starting to give pushback. But if the other person is starting to ramp it up and the other person is taking it to a new level to where Dana is running out of the ability to respond and therefore starting to get overwhelmed, what happens? Then all of a sudden, Jimmy will pull Dana in, and now we suddenly have an emergence of a really aggressive person that's standing in front of the obnoxious person. What it looks like to the outside world is that Mary started to get agitated, but she sort of changed from like a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being nuclear anger. Okay. Mary was able to handle 0 or 1. And then all of a sudden, the person, the obnoxious person or irritating person, saw a shift up to maybe about a 4 or 3. We skipped a level or two. Okay, with Dana. So all they know is Mary is calm, is apologetic, maybe because we might even have some of that. We might have Tanya. As a matter of fact, we'll do it this way. Okay, so somebody comes up and is criticizing Mary, or maybe the boss. Well, let's say a coworker. Okay, at first, maybe knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I'm sorry. And now that starts to feed that selfish pig, right? Who's getting down on Mary. Like, yeah, you should have, if you had your act more together. So first comes out the submissive one, or it could be the detached one, right? It could be anybody. But in this case, let's say the submissive, oh, I'm sorry. And now the coworker doesn't back off, or it could be mother, to where the apology isn't enough for the selfish person that's getting down on Mary. As a matter of fact, where's my let's draw an arrow just so I'm not confusing anybody. Okay, we're going to draw just for a second. No, we're not. We're going to okay. So we're going to go with somebody no, we're going to go with this. So we're going to go like in Charlie Brown. I'm going to make this person that color. Okay, so this is the antagonist over here. And then we're going to get our arrow. There we are. So the antagonist is now really good. This is live, folks, or at least when we're talking about this. So bear with me. So we're going to really set the stage so people can understand. Okay. So Mary worked hard to get something accomplished. Okay. So this could be mother on Mother's Day. So here's our negative person. Okay. I should even write in negative. Will it work? Let me see if I can write in. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. So live. Okay. So we're going to say this is the negative person. Okay. So the negative person catches Mary. So we're off screen. Let's pretend. Then all of a sudden, negative person comes up. This could be husband. This could be coworker. But let's say it's mother. So before you know it, she's seeing mother and mother starts again. Okay, so mother's just jabbing, poking, poking, poking. Well, if you cared enough, or if you, right, giving them a guilt trip, pack our bags, we're going on a guilt trip. Okay. So at first, because it's almost programmed, we use that term, but it's so habitual that what part all of a sudden, Mary's starting to get um, overwhelmed. Mary simply wants, I'm going to shrink that a little bit. No. So Mary simply wants that to stop, right? She has to take a deep breath. She always knows it goes negative. She's interacting with mom. Before you know it, mom's got all these barbs. Okay, so mom's just poking and poking. So at first, Mary tries the path of least resistance. She's getting frustrated and flustered. So what happens? Tonya comes in, or Tanya. Tanya pulls her in. So what is Tanya starting to do? Tanya is going to be apologetic. Yes, mom, I'm sorry. Well, guess who's starting to, and maybe first it was Annie, anxious Annie, but then now right now we've got submissive Tanya. Well, that just feeds a psychopath. Oh, now she, any sign of weakness, and now she's like a machine gun. She's just ripping Tanya a new one, but it's really Mary. Well, guess who's had enough? And so before you know it, Dana has pulled Tanya in. And now, so Mary's in for safekeeping. Tanya's been pulled in. And so now, where it was, oh, hi, mom. Okay, mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And all of a sudden, mom, you know what? Well, I needed to. And, what do you expect, mom? You notice I've just gone up. Mom, you know what? You don't understand because I have things I need to do. Oh, yeah? Well, what kind of daughter are you? Well, mom, listen, you need to stop. Okay. So Dana's starting to, on a scale of 1 to 10, we went from being at a 0 to almost a -0, the submissive part. Well, that just feeds mom's, sadistic bent. So she's shooting all these arrows. Now Dana is starting to get energized. And what's happening with the autonomic nervous system? We've got adrenaline pumping in. So, right, what does that feel like? It feels like anxiety, but it's not fearful anxiety. This is adrenaline from anger that's building. So Dana is now trying to, how do we do this? Where is it? Hold on. She is now turning the tables on mom, and she's starting to give it back a little bit. Well, mom's not going to have that. So mom ups it. And what does she do? Oh, she's starting to fire back. Well, Dana has gone from maybe 0 to 1 to 3 and maybe 4. So now we're starting to, and that's feeding the negative person, right? Goading and goading and goading. Because now the negative person knows, I got your goat, and, you know, getting a rise out of her. Well, now the negative person wants to go there. And then how about this? And after all, you've always been a pain in my side. And you know what? If you were a better daughter, and oh, you've never, she starts going to you never and you always. Well, there it is. Or maybe she used it, Dana Marie, or, now, you're right, whatever it is. And that word, that phrase, that look, that squint, and what happens? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Guess who comes out? We have now a part that has taken this crap, but ain't going to take it anymore. So the anger, remember, mom's talking to who? The body, but there's been a lot of shifting going on. And Dana took it to about a level 3 or 4. But now all of a sudden, that trigger, that phrase, that term, that look, that purposeful dig, no wonder your father screwed you. Whatever. Right? I mean, everybody knows what that, whatever it's going to be for themselves, or mom breaks something, or whatever it is. Mom took it to that level, and all of a sudden, bam, who comes out? Remember, we're at a +4 level anger, and now Jimmy only has 8 to 10. We've done what? We've jumped quite a few. We went from agitated too enraged in whatever way. So now Jimmy's not going to take it and Jimmy's going to do something. So Jimmy may throw something, may break something, may punch something, may pick up an object and threaten who? Okay. So Jimmy took it to that level. And then once Jimmy comes out, what happens to mom running her mouth? Well, mom knows that, whoa, better not go there because now it could be life or limb. It could be something. So now mom suddenly stops. And what happens? Mom vacates the premises, right? She's back. Okay. But mom gets out of there. Okay. What is Mary's body producing right now? Her limbic system is going crazy, right? Her amygdala, we got fight, flight. She got level 10 anger. So dumping adrenaline in. Mom left, mom hung up. And so now the need for Jimmy is what? Not there. So now we can have instantaneously shifting, and who comes back out? Mary comes back out. Now, did Mary remember all of what happened? No, Mary, last thing Mary remembered was what? Level 1. It was starting to, oh, and then what happened? Tonya came out, and then who came out? Right? Dana came out, and then who came out? Jimmy came out, right? Pulled it. And then after mom left, all of a sudden coast is clear, and then Mary comes out. How many interactions, exchanges? Let's say it only took 10 minutes, but maybe it took an hour. How much of that time and how much of what was said does Mary remember? Maybe a tenth. Yet, who remembers the whole dialogue? It's the person I just got off the screen. Mom remembers. So now Mary has a sense of foreboding because guess who was listening? Look at in this level. Every one of them heard. And what are they like right now after mom left? This level is really quiet. Why? Because all of them felt Jimmy come out. And not many of them are aware of Jimmy or they've never talked to Jimmy. Jimmy only comes out certain times. Whenever Jimmy comes out, what happens? Right? Gets pulled in. Or as a matter of fact, I think it's there. That's probably more accurate. Mary really goes deep down inside. So that's interesting, right? Because I think that's probably even better put, right? So Dana pulls Mary in, and then by the time Jimmy comes out, I think that's how it goes, right? So Jimmy is pulling Dana in by virtue of that. Mary really goes down, and she is absolutely, we're going to center this again, she is absolutely unconscious. So she doesn't really even have a sense of what the dialogue was between mom and herself. Okay. So once Jimmy comes back, now Jimmy allows Mary to come back, and Mary now is in a quandary because the last thing Mary remembered was she was talking to mom. Now mom's not on the phone, mom's not around her. And what happened? But the one thing she has, so what is Mary experiencing? Mary is experiencing, as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you for a moment. Everybody stay with me. Um, Mary is experiencing physiologically the effects of what? The adrenal glands, right? Fight, flight. If I can bring this, okay, there we go. I want to, everybody bear with me. If I can, there we go. Now don't worry about that. Sorry, if you can see this, you may be able to see this. I don't really want people to see this. I work with people. You know what? Let me stop. I just want to make sure you can see this. My guess is you could see this. The other half of my life, I work with clients, trauma survivors, and I work with sex offenders. Okay, so that's why I'm very passionate about making sure there's truth. Okay, so
Okay.
Mary has just come back. How does Mary feel? Well, she didn't experience happiness and love. By the way, those are transient. What did she feel? She certainly felt anger up top left here, had some fear going on, fear of being honest with mom, and then it turned into anger. So you stay like this long enough. She's probably got some shame going on afterward. Neutral's a funny color, huh? Okay. But look at, and she wasn't ready. So we already had some surprise. We had fear. We had anxiety, which is, again, a whole lot of adrenaline. Part of her has contempt for mom, to be honest. But look at anger. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had irritable bowel syndrome? Leaky gut? Okay. What's happening in the intestinal area, the GI tract? Okay. How much is the heart beating? Look at how intense right here. The heart is beating. Okay. You have a massive rush of adrenaline. So now I'm going to get back out of it. Well, um, what do we call that, by the way? We call that stress. Okay. So Mary comes back out. Now I'm going to get out of this. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to Mary here. Okay. So when Mary comes back, right, after all that switching, what does Mary remember? Not much. Well, it would be proper to say the last thing Mary remembered is that she was just that mom was starting to run her mouth, that mom was pressuring her, mom was belittling her. And that's the last she remembered. She's not aware of the fact that we could have had a total of maybe four, okay, that stepped in. So let's say it was a half hour exchange. So out of that half hour, Mary may only remember 5 minutes. Mary comes back out after mom hung up, after mom leaves, and Mary's looking around like, oh dear, what happened? And now we're going to do that typical dance, meaning what does Mary do? What Mary's always done. Mary has a sense based upon all the anxiety, all the adrenaline that things didn't end well. Plus, where did mom go? Okay, so what is Mary going to do? Right? What do you think Mary's going to do? Mary's going to call mom. Uh-oh. And eventually what happens again? But let's say so Mary calls mom, and what is that doing with mom's typical persona and the way she abuses and overrides boundaries? Mary is closing the gap. Mary is the one to placate a pig, right? A dog, a fool, those are all biblical terms. So she is the enabler or the rescuer. And so back and forth goes this dance. So Mary now will close the gap. If we put mom back up here, let me, as a matter of fact, let's get another mom up here. Okay, so here's mom. We're going to give her that same color. Okay, maybe a different, oh, there's mom. Okay, so mom was out of the picture as far as mom left. And now by virtue of Mary, an hour goes by, 2 hours a day. Mary senses it's gone on too long. She's not hearing from mom. So Mary's going to close the gap. And that's all mom needs to be empowered, or whoever the perpetrator is. Okay. Um, so that's why this dance can go on for years. And when Mary makes the call, and you see this gap, so that's the boundaries. If Mary closes the gap, now it's going to be a one up, one down relationship where mom can keep pounding on Mary, that mom has the leverage. Let me show you, by the way, what a one up, one down relationship is. I didn't anticipate doing this, but I want to show you what a one up, one down relationship is. Okay, one up, one down is simply one that instead of being mutually beneficial based upon respect and value and appreciation and esteem, we have our little knapsacks. Remember, knapsacks represent our responsibility to do what is right, just, and fair. If things get out of balance because somebody decides to become selfish, and what does that look like? Somebody, we walk into a situation and people dump, they dump knapsacks. If they dump knapsacks, that's injurious. And how do you feel? That's right, you feel high stress. And so now you've got all these knapsacks, and now you're so stressed that you come home and what do? This is where we say hurt people hurt people. Okay. But we need to stop being hurtful. Okay. Maybe once or twice hurt people. But after that, it's a choice. It is a choice. And therefore, I'm no longer excused, but I start to become hurtful. So hurt people once or twice. But after that, it's selfish people hurt people. And then what happens in terms of the nature of the relationship, it becomes lopsided. And these are the sizes of the kinds of knapsacks that we can put on somebody. And this is what we call, now don't worry about the direction, right? I just showed a lopsided relationship, but it doesn't matter which side. So we've got a dump or dump B. So here's a description: emotionally irresponsible, dysfunctional, harmful, toxic. If you're a Christian, this should sound familiar: unequally yoked, unbalanced. There's a user doormat, one up, one down, dump or dumpy, addict, codependent, pig versus a rescuer and enabler. What do I mean by pig? In Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. And by the way, I recommend, if you really want to see more of this, how it plays out, go to SurvivorSupport.net under the podcast tab, and you will see Journey to Healing. And I use all these different graphics, so they'll give you an additional sense. But little Mother Hubbard right here is going against what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. He said, don't take what is special, give it to dogs. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Her problem is she's nice. Nice is not spiritual, right? Doesn't mean be mean, but you won't find nice in the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians 5 or 1 Corinthians 13. We are to be kind, which means useful. Don't be nice. Why? Because nice gets you this, and that gets you this, and that means ultimately you are heading downhill. See our little people here? The person on the right is the user, and they're taking you downhill, and you're being sucked into the pig zone where you are dealing with somebody who is at the very least a narcissist. They're dumping on you, likely a sociopath or a white collar psychopath. So you don't want to continue to deal with them. That's why ultimately, whether you have been ritualistically abused, SRA, MK Ultra, the challenge is the knapsacks. Okay, so it's always the same, which is the good news, right? It means that you too can recover from this. Okay, we'll go. I'm very much aware of the time. Um,
You're fine.
so if we want to keep going, or we'll just do a little bit more interview, but a little bit more of this, but I am very much aware that sometimes this is a lot of information. Okay, I just gave the dynamic. Let's look at the subconscious parts, because again, when triggered, you're going to be tapping into a more powerful part of you that even the co-conscious parts may not entirely be aware of. Why? Because when they get overwhelmed, so the reason why your everyday parts come out and pull you in is you get overwhelmed. Well, what's an alter to do? I hadn't quite thought. So, what is Robin to do when when she gets overwhelmed? Well, you can have who do we have here? Stephanie, right? They can play tag team and they actually communicate well. But what happens when they get worn out or they both get overwhelmed and they're doing the best? Now, one's out at a time. Well, if they are losing it and it's starting to vibrate on this level, meaning everybody's getting overwhelmed, then I want to call it the A string, but that's not saying this is a B string. These are less important. That's not how this works. It's degree of intensity. Then what'll happen is, let's say Stephanie is absolutely exhausted. Everybody's exhausted, and Dana is disgusted, and nothing else. And Aaron's going, "It'll never work. It doesn't matter anyways." Marcia's saying, "I don't care anyways." Right? Amy's saying, "I just want to go play." Okay. When it's too much or they get triggered, then again, the suppressed parts, the subconscious parts, IFS calls these the managers. So I'm differentiating between the everyday support team and the managers. That's where a more powerful level will step in. But this is where it's driven by intensity. So on the suppressed part level, this is where you will definitely lose track of time, even and chunks of time, because you're losing potentially minutes here, you're losing potentially hours here. Okay. But this is going to be certainly, for this level to come out, it presupposes your support team is overwhelmed. So we could say this is not a good analogy. Okay, so all the support team, bear with me. Um, I was going to say this is the college team, but that's not. These are all pro. Okay, but these are Pro Bowl. Maybe that's okay. So this is your, as a matter of fact, yes, because the goal is you need to be the quarterback on the team. That's perfect, by the way. Okay, so this is your professional team, but every now and then you need a Hall of Famer to step in. That's good. I like that. Okay, so you're hearing it here live on Emma's program, right? I'm just going to phrase this is the Pro Bowl level.
That was a good one.
All right. And so when Kirsten has to step in, um, two things can happen. Kirsten might be disgusted with everybody or might have a lot of empathy. It really depends upon their personality and the sense. But when Kirsten comes out, Mary gets pulled in, of course, but I'm sorry. So what's happened is, everybody stay with me now, right? So Mary gets overwhelmed. Robin comes in. Robin's doing a task, and they have to tag team. So you've got this back and forth between Stephanie and Robin. Stephanie and Robin are communicating. Mary's somewhat aware that this may or may not be going on. It's kind of like maybe Mary stepped out of her body, so to speak, or looking down, watching this, or as they get overwhelmed, or it could be right away, but it presupposes if they try it again, the point at which they get overwhelmed, Stephanie and Robin, Kristen's going to step in. And if Kristen steps in, you know what? That's what happens. They kind of pull them into their place. Okay. This is going to be more intensive. Okay. And as a matter of fact, so the upper level, and what I mentioned last time was this: each of us can see whatever level we're on and up. So think about like we're swimming at different depths. So the co-conscious parts are not really aware of, they've seen the effects, but they don't know when these parts are going to come out. So it becomes more serious when these parts have to come out. Maybe that's a good way to put it. The degree of intensity. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We got Kirsten up here. Okay. So when Kirsten has come out, it presupposes Robin and Stephanie, they don't have as much power. It doesn't mean they're not as important and not powerful, but Kirsten really, when she steps in, as a matter of fact, when any of these suppressed parts, the subconscious managers, right, IFS managers, when this level steps in, all this level becomes quiet. So the big guns have come out. Okay. So that's why when Kirsten comes out, even the co-conscious parts may not be aware. So it's significant. And this is really the beginning of the crazy making. So at first, Mary's hearing voices. Typically, you're not going to hear, not all the time, are you going to hear from this level first or on a daily basis. But when it starts to become significant, that's where you're going to start to hear from these suppressed parts. Okay. When it starts to become significant, and when these first line of defense weren't enough. That's why the Pro Bowl level has to step in. Okay. Now look at kind of how I've grouped these, and even next time we'll probably, by the next time we're together for the next part, I'll probably differentiate them even more. So we've got a kind of a preliminary look. So we'll go from maybe right to left. How's that? So we're going to stick with Brandy, Jimmy, Lucy, and William. So we've got Jimmy, who represents a greater degree of anger. It's very important to know that there's going to be an atheist part. Why? Because look over here. We have a spiritual part. This is really important, especially for SRA victims, because it is okay to acknowledge that part of you hates going to church, wants nothing to do with God. Why? Because Lucy is really honest, because there are some significant questions. Lucy needs to be able to be validated. Such, how about this question? If there's a loving God, then why did you go through that? If you give me an easy answer, you're going to be stuck. Why? Because I'll tell you what, Belinda's giving that easy, and now it's correct. Well, God, all things work together for good for those that love. Okay, but you know what? Still, where was God? The book of Job speaks to these very difficult issues. Okay, so I also, for SRA victims, I chose a name. What name did I choose? As a matter of fact, this may help you just for a moment. What is that? How about that? No, I didn't want that one. Sorry. Oh my. Okay. Um, Anybody want to guess? Maybe an abbreviation. So let me go back to, I'll just choose gray, and I'm going to, no, where's, sorry. I'm looking for, how do I fill her name in? There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, what does that look like? Some of you got that. If I say Lucy, there we go. Guess what maybe this part went through, and maybe somebody named her or she named herself, because deep down inside, what she saw, intense anger, is like burning anger, like burning in hell. The devil has burning, so Lucifer. So we may have the first inkling of somebody that went through stuff or feels based upon what they were told or saw. So sometimes names will be very representative, very symbolic. Okay, what I did was my poor computer. Okay, now here's another example. Look at the name that so now there's a seductive part, right? We had a playful part up here. As a matter of fact, I want to jump over here. We've got a spontaneous, flirtatious part that's very irresponsible. Maybe she's going out dancing with people she doesn't know. So she's flirting, but flirting in places that could potentially be dangerous or irresponsible. Here, now we have, oh, okay. I gave her, anybody remember that band? Okay. So sometimes the core person or the primary person or on some level, they gave themselves a name or were given a name. So maybe this is one that is just wants to smoke dope and come out of the 70s. Okay. Daphne, by the way, I think comes from, I was thinking of an Athenian god. And so you can see different kinds of names can be given. Oftentimes, when you're at this level, you will start to see that names will reflect something. There's a different degree of sexuality. Sex and sexuality are used differently by different parts. As a matter of fact, do I have a child like, okay, this may be sort of a more mild type of younger, maybe a younger teen, but still will come across like an adult, but is desperate for connection. If you've ever been given the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, in this schematic overview, what's happened is this. Brenda has come out, and then maybe Jimmy. The idealizing part, and then the moment, because Jimmy's looking for it, the moment it looks like the therapist or the spouse didn't keep their promise. Now, think about what that looks like. How about maybe made a human error, ran late, forgot something? Jimmy shoots first and asks questions later, and Jimmy knows it's only a matter of time till somebody burns them. So the moment there's even the inkling of disappointment, what happens if I had two mice, I could mouse mice real fast, you go from idealizing to what? I hate him, right? You're the best therapist ever to, I don't even want to talk to you. You know what? You're the worst person, or I love you and we're always going to be together. And oh, you're the worst thing. So borderline personality disorder are two extremes, black or white, either or. Idealization or idealizing or idolizing to now abject, hatred and dismissing. So that's why Frank Anderson, and I concur, he said he's never seen a case of borderline personality disorder that didn't have parts. So that's really the nature of borderline personality disorder, to be honest. So mindfulness is Mary, if you do DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, what mindfulness is you're starting to become aware. You're mindful of these different parts. Okay, so we can have seductive parts. Notice these two, which will fulfill different purposes. So we may have the playful one, and that's why I kind of put these in purple. So when the playful one is out, and if that's not taking care of the stress enough, then all of a sudden we could have another one come in. But it would actually be Amy is out, starts out as playful, but before you know it, so I'm sorry, oh, that's the whole thing, right? Mary comes in, but before you know it, they're getting in touch with a real need. And then before you know it, Mary's been pulled in. So what started out as, yeah, oh, sorry, let's go get a drink. That before you know it, at the table, and even the girls that you went out with. So you're all going to go out and just have a fun time karaoke. And so that at first was Mary, but then, I'm sorry, Amy. So Mary doesn't know about that. She's got guilt going on. But okay, so she gets pulled in by Amy. Oh, sorry. I need to get my old, there we go. So Amy is out having a good time doing karaoke, but all of a sudden, what? It's been a long time since they've been able to really cut loose, like foot loose, cut loose, that song. Okay. So what happens? We got Freebird that comes out, and there's been some stuff that's been brewing. So Mary gets pulled in, and the girls that all go out together doing karaoke all of a sudden see what emerge. Oh, we're not only having one little drink, now we're taking, I gotta let the computer catch up. We're doing tequila shooters, or I don't know what they're doing. And what started out as Mary being really conservative started being kind of playful at karaoke, and then before you know it, we not having just karaoke, but we're doing a strip show, right? And then okay, we're halfway. Oh, we're really, I don't know, bumping, grinding, and then all of a sudden now we're doing the strip show. And now what happens if you do a strip show with a lot of alcohol and guys? Oh yeah, and now somebody comes up, and what happens? And so you may have a couple that are still, they're kind of egging each other on a little bit. So they're kind of tag teaming. And this one's going, oh, yeah. And also, then, if we got some programming going on, as we used that term previously, right, you could have other stuff. But now what'll happen is this: if there's been any ritualistic abuse, and this is the most important one right here, is let's say Sally, now, you know the song Lay Down Sally? Thank you very much. So guess who named her? Okay, so Sally now is going to go out to the car with a total stranger. And before I know it, now guess what's going on all these? Oh my gosh, no wonder they're shut down. Oh, we got the dutiful, the responsible, and this one knows they're being used, and anxious one. So everybody is shut down because these subconscious suppressed parts can silence everybody, and all of these just get overwhelmed as well. And so now Sally has picked up on a guy, And we know nothing about this guy. Could be a 50 Shades of Grey kind of guy, could be a serial rapist murderer. But what happens is they get in the back of the car, and then now it's triggering all sorts of people down here. I didn't even put, maybe we need to put a little childlike, but it's reverberating. So that's where some of the real bottom line ones. Um, but I'll tell you what oftentimes comes out. Now, all of a sudden, she gets triggered by a sight, a sound, a touch, and then we go to what? A part that is in control. Now, the guy doesn't care, but the guy doesn't know why Brandy needs to be on top. And also, the guy doesn't know Brandy and Jimmy, right, are thinking about slitting the guy's throat, or Brandy has control over. So she's calling the shots. And you can see how that might be recreating what on the inside. And then also, Jimmy now is angry at Brandy. You can have anger all over the place now, but Brandy doesn't care, and she gets in here. The exchange, when everybody goes back to normal, and before you know it, Mary is disheveled. She's, meaning her clothes are all over the place. She awakens. The guy's done. He left. Or the next thing there you go. The next thing Mary knows, she wakes up in her apartment and she's wondering what happened. Okay. Um, we'll just quickly continue on from right to left. Brenda is that part that is desperate for connection. Okay. And Brenda will play a very important role in therapy. Um, but there's going to be a juggling act, so to speak. I use that term loosely because Brenda needs to trust the therapist, but Brenda also, and maybe also Jimmy, ultimately, they have to remember that the therapist is human. Okay. And ultimately, nobody can meet the deepest of needs. That's where God comes in. Okay. So continuing to move. So these are, again, kind of categories. And when one category is triggered, the others will be shut down as well. So within this level, you can have certain parts. Now, think of the movie Inside Out, right? That animated film, when they started, the different emotions would take over the control panel. You then have certain more foundational or key parts, very powerful parts, that are the negative ones, the ones that get down on somebody. And that's also then the pessimistic one, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Um, um, Murphy's Law. Okay, so Eeyore, drill sergeant, hypercritical, negative. So it's one thing to have Dana maybe get down on Mary. That's going to be a more mild. It's still frustrating and hurtful, but that's a whole different ball game because when these get going, these have the potential of saying you're nothing. You'll never be nothing. See how you are. I mean, Nancy can almost begin the process of driving Mary to just go away in a whole lot of different ways. Okay. Then you have the negative self-talk, drill sergeant. Oh yeah, well, this is, we're going to make you do all sorts of stuff to almost do. You can see how that would kind of tie into the spiritual guilt. So we're going to make you do penance, or you're going to really have to make up for this. The compulsive and overly responsible part and dutiful workaholic. You can see how Robin and Stephanie would be fairly similar to. So these kind of are backups, or these are backups for Robin and Stephanie. Okay. But when it really gets difficult, this can be, for instance, a week when all of a sudden we see literally, 7 days. Before you know it, there's a binge of workaholism that these parts come out. Notice what I said with Belinda. You notice in that name, for those that went through satanic ritual abuse, Baal. So maybe there's a part of Belinda who is also feeling guilty for what she doesn't really know, but maybe what she was forced to participate in. So I put Belinda close to, so you could see how she would be driven. She's going to drive Kirsten, or Kirsten may have a sense of these, right, of Belinda. But also, Belinda is very close to who? Carrie. Spiritual guilt and dutiful workaholic. So maybe Carrie will start doing penance, and then who will pick up? Now notice the name I gave here. Some of you that may recall a movie Carrie. Again, this was random on my part because if a part was forced to do things, what do you do with that guilt? And so, right, it's really shame because it's not yours, but how do you get that off of you? And maybe you were told that you were spawn of the devil, or there's a lot of different things. Okay. So this part will never, it's going to take a long time to get those knapsacks. There you go. We're going to get the knapsacks off. Okay. Um, but then you have two parts that we might call it, for lack of a better term, positive. Now, it doesn't mean that these are negative, but we don't mind experiencing these parts. Okay, so sacrificial and caretaking. You can see how Hannah might be very similar to, right, or relate to Brenda, or might be there when Brenda is getting too overwhelmed. Notice the name that I chose, Samuel's mother. Okay, was very nurturing, had a deep relationship with God. And then Belinda finds it very easy to trust God. Well, you can see how that might cause an internal conflict with who? Belinda, and how do you think Lucy get along? There you go. They don't, right? And so you can have this internal war going on that if you're not aware of it, this can almost, here's important, this can almost feel demonic, right? These parts over here. So if Lucy starts getting down on or overwhelming or winning the day, so to speak, it can feel like what? That Lucy is now silencing everyone. And if you have a therapist, I'm going to get down on us therapists for a second. If you have a therapist that comes out of a charismatic background, I'll tell you what they're going to think Lucy is. I'll tell you what they're going to think um, Brandy is. I'll tell you what they're going to think these are. Okay, they'll call this as the flesh. And okay, yeah, it's in there, but right, this all has to do with pain management. Okay, but she'll certainly think Lucy and William, you can see how they would test limits. Um, you can see how William and Brandy would certainly test limits, right? How about all of a sudden Mary has no inklings of homosexuality, but all of a sudden William, guess what gender William's going to go for? Maybe female. So the body, Mary is going for female, but what part came out? Well, what's William all about? Testing limits. Oh my gosh, because Belinda knows what the scriptures say about homosexuality. But William, as far as William knows, William is a male. Okay, so that's why it's hard. But if you have a charismatic therapist, I'll tell you what they're going to end up concluding, that Lucy is a demon. And that's not even getting to the underlying parts. Okay, because I'll tell you what, Lucy doesn't want anything to do with God. And so we haven't even gotten to really powerful parts. There, look at that, self-harm. Okay, and that'll be the cutting. So it's really important. And you know what? We'll kind of bring it in for a landing here. Okay, whatever happened to wait, okay, maybe what happened there? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so what I can tell you is this. There's a big difference between demon possession, or in the verse that's used all the time, and it's wrong in this context, is the house needs to be swept clean. What you're really telling all of these is get in line. You're not, here it is, you're not welcome or acceptable. Well, guess what? They're a part of you. Oh, even the negatives, right? So you're going to go through this little ritual, to be honest. It'll be a Christian ritual. You're going to say a prayer. I've seen this too many times. Okay, we're going to say the prayer of multi-generational breaking of bonds. Lord, I rebuke the spirit of playing cards and the spirit of driving through a car wash backwards, and I rebuke the spirit of overeating, and I rebuke the spirit of Lay's potato chips, and I rebuke the spirit. People are going to be upset. I rebuke the spirit of Oreo cookies and the. We could be here, and I rebuke the spirit that must have come from my great grandfather, who was a gambling addict and who didn't repent. And therefore, I know I'm controversial, but I don't care at this point. You need to be free. And the Lord does not cause us to pay for the sins of our parents. He's very clear in the Old Testament, right? It does say that the sins will be passed down. That's the ripple effect. But he was very clear that the kids will not have to pay for the sins of their parents and the parents for the sins, meaning direct cause and effect. Okay, so Murray Bowen in Extended Family Systems Therapy talks about multi-generational transmission system. You can pass along crap in a family, right? So Mary, if she came out of an alcoholic home, how complete, how was the bonding, right? She didn't get what she needed. Well, who's she likely going to meet then? She's susceptible to going to a bar, meeting a guy meets gal, and now they have a dysfunctional relationship. So now we're talking two generations, and now boy meets girl, they shack up together, they start moving in together, and now they have a kid. Well, Mary's not a complete person. I don't care parts or not. They don't know what to do when it gets stressful. So now they have a dysfunctional relationship. What's that? It's tension reducing, but never tension resolving. And all Mary knows is she's got a mother. Oh, here's mother. I forgot mother floating around. Okay, so mother keeps interjecting. Maybe mother keeps trying to sabotage good relationships. And so until Mary can put boundaries up with mother, now we've got ties to that. We have diffuse boundaries. So Mary gets together. I'm going to get rid of mom. Okay. So now Mary meets a guy. That's the second generation because Mary came from mom and dad. Okay. Now, second generation would be Mary. But Mary's going to start to look into. So if she does a genogram with a therapist, by the way, they're going to look at the family tree, looking at her parents and then grandparents. Why? Because crap runs downhill. Think about an AA or NA where you have the different roles and rules of dysfunctional families, adult children of alcoholics. That is not because you have the demon of alcoholism that gets transferred from one generation to the next. And so the axe needs to be placed at the root of the tree. Don't cherry pick those verses. What it means is this: your parents were whacked out and they try to get their needs met through you. They didn't talk directly. They didn't resolve issues. So they triangulated in the kids. So the kids never learned how to be their own person. So they're either going to be the scapegoat, the hero, the black sheep. Everybody's familiar with those terms. That's not a spiritual thing that needs to have things cast out. It needs healing and boundaries and knapsacks placed off of them. Okay. Everybody have one knapsack, no more, no less. Crap trickles downhill, and so knapsacks can build. So if Mary and her new husband don't work it through, guess what's going to happen with their kids? They're going to be at a lower level of what's called emotional differentiation. Right now on the inside, because of trauma, Mary is very emotionally undifferentiated. She can't discern her emotions, and therefore they take over. So it's much better and much more realistic and much more productive, in my estimation, to view things as just a normal, understandable result of trauma. Now, are there spiritual things? And I would say, certainly for a Christian, it would be you can have demonic, but not on the inside. A Christian cannot be demon possessed. Okay. Bottom line, just bottom line, right? That's the nature of a Christian. Now, if somebody has gotten into stuff, you may have allowed a foothold. Okay, so what do you do with that? You repent, you apologize, you own your part, and then you taking care of that. But think about normal spiritual warfare, right? Emma, think about the prayer you pray for us as you start every podcast. So we want the spiritual armor on, but the nice thing, and the nicest thing is this: greater is he who is within us than he who is within the world. That's a point blank blanket statement. That's a blanket truth. You cannot tell me what's true for everybody except for SRA or MK Ultra. Sorry. The truth is God is greater and he wants the captive set free. How do you do that? It is the truth. You'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. And in your opening prayer, Emma, you pray for the strongholds. That's out of 2 Corinthians chapter 10. The word in the Greek for strongholds are prisons as well. We can create prisons. Perps create prisons of what? Falsehoods, of lies. So we pull down the strongholds, taking every thought into captivity, like herding cats. So, what is going to be the answer for anybody, whether someone that's experienced some hard stuff or dysfunctional stuff or whacked out stuff or satanic stuff or MK Ultra stuff? Same process. Okay. And it is in ultimately the truth. You will know the truth. The truth will set you free. The truth is, you were not handed over to Satan. The truth is, you do not have demons inside of you if you're a Christian. If you want to know whether or not, then take the step. Okay. What you have are a lot of wounded parts that need healing, like any of us need healing. They need to be understood. They need to have their voice. They need to be validated. They also need to act responsibly, right? So that's where growth. So the challenge will be you're going to get to know everybody, and then everybody ultimately is going to have a chance to grow. And that's how you bring the past up to the present as you heal the woundedness, right? We've just gotten to layer number 2 or level number 2. But so the process is very normal. I want to take on behalf of SRA victims and MK Ultra, I want to demystify what happened to you so you know you're not an exception in this sense, that you're not beyond God's reach and his hope. You're not a second-class spiritual citizen. They haven't won. They are not more powerful than God is. God didn't come to set you free temporarily, and then you have to go back in the dark place. And then the best you can hope for here, and this is really important, God did not consign you to have to limp through life. He wants you to have life and have it abundantly. Now, there's a Grand Canyon of pain you're going to have to go through, but the ability to overcome means you're going to have his help in redeeming this situation and going through the process and feeling the pain, but knowing that he's going to walk through the darkest of valley. He's going to bring you out so that you walk out into freedom, into light, and you never have to go back into that place anymore. And that's how you take your power back. And that's why for every SRA, I'll now get out of this picture, for every SRA victim and every MK Ultra victim, maybe this is the word for you tonight. Let's start with this. Who do you think's more powerful? The bottom line. And there's a lot of people that will always add comments, and we want them to, we encourage them to, but and somebody just said, well, about electro frequencies and sound. Okay, so what I say is that meaning the voices are still being projected. Okay, I'll tell you what, you're hopeless then. I don't have hope for some. I mean, what am I supposed to do with a client who, if somebody, I'm not minimizing, but think about this. If somebody can pull a trigger, flip a switch, and make you do something from the outside, then they have control over you. No therapist is going to help you. And now the question is this: who's more powerful, the person pulling the trigger or God? You can't have it both ways. You have to decide. And what I'm telling you is this: there is no weapon formed against you that will prosper unless an electrode has been, sorry, I'm not angry at anybody, but unless somebody I'm not making fun of this, but to every MK Ultra and SRA victim, and I was very good friends with uh, Dr. Judith Riesman. She did a lot of unmasking of MK Ultra and unmasked Kinsey. Okay, so I really understand this. This is an either or proposition. Either God's big enough or he's not. If he's not, then don't do therapy, because all you're going to do is keep dangling a carrot in front of you, and then you're going to keep getting it snatched away. But just shy of an electrode, like Mission Impossible, those kind of things, okay, if somebody implanted an electrode, then get it out with surgery. Why? Because until you get that out, now don't go digging, but that's an either or proposition. If there's something implanted in you, right? If there's a transistor or something, whatever term, every time they push a button, it's overriding you. Then it doesn't matter how sincere you are. You become like an AI. Okay. So literally, you need to find out, was something implanted? Then you need surgery. You don't need emotional therapy or spiritual therapy, right? If you're deficient in magnesium, right? So if something is hijacking your brain and something was implanted, get that out. Until you do, right? Then they're always going to be more powerful. So just shy of that. Now, somebody could still say, well, Jon, you don't. Okay, but still it comes down to this. Who's more powerful? So I really want SRA and you meaning the most, those that have been through the most. That's really a place to start. Because if deep down inside you feel like they have hooks in you, no matter how far you get, they're going to reel you back in. They're going to jerk your chain. They're going to push your button. They're going to flip a switch, and you're going to come back. Then what you believe is they are more powerful. So I really want to challenge everybody to start there. How powerful do you think God is? If a part of you has been saying this, well, Jon, yeah, but you don't, I'm not upset. I'm not faulting anybody, but think about what you're saying. I'm saying this. I believe God is all powerful. I believe he came to set you free. I believe there is no weapon that is formed against you that will prosper. He who the Son has set free is free indeed. We did not choose him. Remember, he said, you did not choose me, but I chose you. So there goes works-based righteousness. He came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. Either those principles and premises and truths are true or they're not. That either they're true for everybody else except for you, but I don't see any exception in those verses. So I want each person to really take a step back and allow themselves to consider the authority of God's word. Plus, who is Satan? He's an angel. Do you think Michael the archangel can read your mind? What about Gabriel? Michael's head of the military, right? Gabriel, head of the postal service. Do you think Gabriel can read your mind? Do you think an angel can read your mind? Top three angels: Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer. Lucifer is actually a good name, but nobody wants to. Don't name your kid Lucifer. Okay, but it meant light bearer. His nature changed. He became a deceiver or a liar, so Satan. They are created beings. No created beings, as powerful as they are, can read your mind. Now, I'm aware of technology and all, right? But still, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I thought it was a losing proposition. Why am I going to work with clients? That means I'm setting them up for failure. I'm setting them up for false hope. I'm putting them in harm's way, and I'm putting me in harm's way. I would never start working with an SRA victim unless I truly believed that God is more powerful and there's a way out. And that no matter what was done to them, that he who is within us is greater, and he who is for us is greater. Think about um, Elisha and his servant, right? King of Syria. His soldiers. They're surrounding him. Gehazi's all freaked out, and what a powerful reminder to us all. So Gehazi's freaked out because there was a bounty put on Elisha's head, and Elisha basically said, "Relax." From a human perspective, it was over. Just like Pharaoh chasing the Israelites right up against the Red Sea. Psalm 46:10, by the way, it says, "Be still and know that I'm God." So Elisha prayed, what? Lord, open his eyes. And what did Gehazi see? He looks up. They're in a canyon. They're hemmed in. And what do they see? He looks all of a sudden. He looks all around the canyon, the rim, all around. He sees what? Outnumbering chariots of fire. That is the God we serve. The perps were human. The perps are human. Satan is a created being. That's all. Powerful. I don't care. God is more powerful than anyone. Either I believe that or I don't. God did not intend for you to start this journey, get your hopes up, and then have a being more powerful than God snatch all your success away and snatch you back in the family, snatch you back in the cult, snatch you back to be raped again, snatch you back to be submissive again. He has come to open up the prison doors of the POW camp and have you come out. And while you're doing that, like the Egyptians, it says they raised their fists. What do you think they were doing with their middle finger? That's exactly right. Oh, Uhler ran, I don't know, I said raise hands. Okay. At the very least, yeah, what are they do? They're leaving. Why are they raising their hands? They took their power back. And there will be those times, though, right? They took their power back. Now, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and they are in that crunch moment, divinely orchestrated dead end. And they started to really doubt that God had brought them out of slavery. And what did God tell the people through Moses? Be still, see the salvation of your God. Jesus came to give us peace. So there is hope, there's peace, and there is rest. So we can have confidence as we start this journey that this can be the last time. But you have to stick with truth. Okay, read the Bible for yourself, right? The Lord will give you insight into it. But if it seems like what I've been saying, as far as my interpretation, okay, be like the Bereans, right? Don't take anybody's word for it. Go back, read everything in context, and see if these things aren't so to speak. So,
Great presentation and great way to finish that, Jon, with words of hope, which you are so good at providing to people who are in need of that. And just shows what a fantastic therapist you are. And we're all really lucky to have you in this movement, not only advocating for survivors, but also working with them. You know, it's really nice to see somebody like you taking that initiative to learn all of this and present it. You know, you're going out publicly and presenting all of this, and I really honor that about you and think it's just wonderful. So I really appreciate you breaking down that second part of the chart and doing a little recap of the first. I'm guessing we'll pick up next time where we left off and go a little bit deeper into the
we'll
chart, which I'm
go
really
into the
excited
next
about.
level. That's right. Maybe we'll look at again what are some of the spiritual conflict, especially between that level, because we've looked at kind of we're a couple levels down now, really two levels down. But what'll start to happen as far as the straight up and down? I mean, I mean, the survivor and the parts or the alters, and then because there's ongoing therapy between all of them. And what should the therapist? Maybe I'll give some therapists some advice as we go. So I'll give some examples of what happens and how some will actually tear up. Maybe we didn't mention, or maybe I forgot, how some will actually rip up the journals as we start to actually get on the very next level. So they'll try to destroy some of their work. And you'll understand why Sybil recanted. Bless her heart. I don't even know if she's still alive. If she is, I don't know if she's still alive. Boy, wouldn't that be wonderful? If she still is, have her get in touch with us. Have her get in touch with me, and I'll help her see that she didn't fib. She didn't lie. She got shut down. There you go.
Yeah, like so many survivors do,
Yeah.
Like I said, you give people hope and show how not intimidating this is. I think that can be scary too, not knowing what to expect and feeling very nervous. And you're not only showing people what to expect, but you're giving them tools to see if somebody's a good fit for them, which is really good because I think a lot of people go through therapy for a while and then find out it's bad after they've connected with somebody and shared so much, and it can be a real letdown. So I think going in, it's almost like starting a new relationship and sort of knowing where the red flags are and where the green flags are right away instead of learning it down the road. So I appreciate you empowering people to take control of that and to be able to sort of vet the person that they're with instead of maybe just trusting every single person, to sort of use it like an interview and to see what boxes the person in front of you checks, and how deep they're willing to go into this. So I really appreciate you giving all these tools to people.
You're welcome. And I just thought from what you said, Emma, that maybe if they take a screenshot, so as you go into, so I hadn't quite thought of that. So that's how somebody can maybe even use that. I mean, how can they vet a therapist right now? Take a screenshot and just even maybe the whole thing, and take that with you into as you're seeing if it's a good fit, and ask the therapist what they think about this. That'll be either or. Right? Now that'll cut to the chase right there. Either the therapist's going to go, well, like, what is this? Or they're going to look at it. And I must say, I think I know what I'm talking about. They'll say, wow, wow. Okay, you'll see immediately. So that can save you time.
Great tip. And while we're on talking about therapists, tell people where they can find you so that way they can keep in touch with you and connect with you and follow all of your great works. You have hours and hours and hours and hours of content out there for people.
Emma, you're too kind. SurvivorSupport.net is the primary site. And again, that's a resource. And how I recommend using it is move from left to right. Podcasts, yeah, literally, as you just write Journey to Healing, I would start, like if somebody's brand new to this, and you can see kind of what I'm working on. If you go over the home tab and scroll down, you'll see what's new. Our worldwide reach, we've got a little map there, but that doesn't matter. If you want to see my bio, about is my bio. So if you want to read about me. So what's new is sort of what I'm doing on an ongoing basis. I've had to slow down a little bit just because I'm actually developing what will be a first of a kind treatment uh, program for guys that have offended. It would really hold them accountable. So I'm really excited about that. It's a whole website that nobody else will know other than the perps. So it's a full-fledged thing that I'm doing. Journey to Healing then is where you begin, and you're going to move your, if you want to contact me, there are a number of folks that want me to work with them. And so you can either see at the bottom of the page where it says schedule here, that woman looking straight down. So it'll come back right there. You can click on there or onto the home tab. If you want to find out what Ken McClinton, owner of or CEO of Journey to Healing, says about the program, if you want to watch it live, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to see past programs, you go into the podcast tab and then scroll down. You'll see I'm doing a series on, so the first two will be over the holidays or about the holidays. Of course, as this is being taped, this went through the holidays, but I'm in a series now on forgiveness, what it is versus what it is not. I think I'm up to part 22. I've got about 9 already that I've done. I'm really behind. So eventually there'll be about 50, each of 50 parts. Each of these are an hour. So the second most important issue, in my estimation, is the issue of forgiveness. The first is, how can I be made right with God? But if I don't get forgiveness right, I'm going to be stuck. So I'm very methodical. So right now, I think if you keep scrolling down, we've got about 22 programs. And then I will eventually pick back up on that series and that series. So you can see, I guess I have 22 right now. Um, so I've got about 7 to 9 yet to go in the hopper. And then I'll just continue. So we'll have about 50 parts. Each builds upon the other. So I highly recommend every survivor go through that. And then below that is the 2 years worth of a series on boundaries. That is going to continue probably for 2 more years. And there's one thing, if somebody wants to see my work, was somebody asked a question. So there's just one thing on sex offenders. Okay, so the rest, I highly recommend spend your time, go all the way down, methodically work your way up. So you'll shorten the time in therapy, by the way. And that's why I have it. So I really want people to have tools that will shorten the journey to healing for them. So you kind of move left to right. Insights 1 and 2, it used to be just one, got too big. So there's a lot on there about personal pain, about people that will manipulate, and all the way down to predators. And there's stuff about the trans movement just because predators are using trans movement. The next is more of a research kind of blog, or not a blog, I'm sorry, my website, churchprotect.org. And so if you want to see some of the clinical stuff that I've done, you go to, as well as under insights. So if you want to see how I use social media, if you what's Euler up to? By the way, the very first one, when called to do hard things, I was the first psych staff in the US to blow the whistle on inmate abuse, including a trans inmate. Again, I don't really use that term, but still. So they went after me. I was a whistleblower and it cost me dearly, but I'm the reason why there's solitary confinement is no longer used in the US against mental health inmates. So that tells that story. The rest are, as far as the insights tab, you'll see different smattering of things that I do on Facebook, primarily Twitter. But again, I don't have a lot of time, but a lot of news articles. But also, there are some examples. I go toe to toe with perps online. If anybody's familiar with how a perp operates, don't try it at home, but I give an example how to debate with them. But you don't want to debate with a perp. I always do it for educational purposes. But under the truths tab, what you'll see is two things. One is I lay out, well, we have myths versus truths. And then because I'm not published yet, again, eventually this year, I'm going to actually work on my own book on forgiveness. But then within a year or two, I'm actually going to publish some research articles. But until then, I wanted people, because the perps and the naysayers and the perp apologists were saying, we don't have to listen to Euler, he's not published. So I decided to do not just peer reviewed, but professional peer reviewed. So as somebody is beginning to look at my work, I've got emails on there to show I'm the real deal. I did what I say I do. And then, as a matter of fact, that first one, so I've got kudos. I've got people that have reviewed my work. So when I get kudos from the director and professor of the Stanford Center for Precision Mental Health, Mental Health and Wellness Director, that's pretty good. And as you continue on down, so I do have professional peer review, but then even more than that as somebody scrolls down. So you'll see different. So there's a little bit about my work, but you'll see then also the nature of predators, what they're like. So that's more of an academic or more of a heavy duty kind of thing. And if anybody does want me to present to their church, I recommend collaborating with a number of churches. How can churches keep churches safe? So that's my training site. And then unmaskingthetransmovement.com. There you go. So if you want to understand my concerns, there are two places that you can go right here. And Dr. Ann Gillies, my co-host, our producer, had a heart attack 2 months ago. We put things on hold a little bit. We were driving hard. He's a hockey coach as well, a 40-year broadcaster. And so we've slowed down with that. But I have a YouTube under the same title. So there you go. And we don't have a lot of people that have subscribed, if you can believe it. I feel badly. We're really shadow banned, but this is really good clinical, solid solid episodes, a half hour each. So we have over 120 part one and part two episodes. So I would recommend people get the word out about this. Okay, so if you want the best and definitive information, how to combat and unmask the trans movement, this is the site. So it's been a labor of love. Okay, it saddens me to think we have 365. It's like this is the best information you're going to find on the trans movement, bar none, because I've worked hard to make sure that we've had the right guest. The last guest was Scott Nugent, who's just sort of semi-retiring. Okay, and then blog SurvivorSupport.us. And then haven't been able to really do anything with that recently. Oh, and there's my site, and then my actual YouTube. Okay, that has a wide variety of stuff on there. So you'll see both Journey to Healing as well as the unmasking, and then a whole wide variety of different interviews. So wide variety of stuff on there. But it'll equip. Oh, and look at who's that? The most recent one. There we go. There's Emma. So that's an abbreviated one. I'm going to direct people back to the original site. So that's an abbreviated version of probably, I think, the most recent one we did, Emma.
Funny, it's abbreviated and it's still 2 hours.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, all my podcasts are so long. I love it.
Yeah.
And then you're also on Twitter.
Also on Twitter. There you go. I forgot about that. That's right. And
Yeah.
so what I do with the Insights tab on Church Protect, also Facebook as well a little bit, is I just really try to, if something kind of gets my goat or something I feel needs to be commented on. As a matter of fact, today, even if you want to scroll down just for a moment, I saw an article on surrogacy and it just, and then porn as well, but unbelievable that these two people, it said a husband and wife. Well, you don't know, right? But the husband and wife supposedly wanted a surrogate to abort the baby. So that was today, um, January 23rd. And so what did I, and again, I don't trust it when it says husband and wife because too many guys are renting women's wombs, women that are in need. Now, maybe this gal wasn't in need, but what I say is this is the kind of ethical and moral chaos that's created when life is objectified and woke trans pusher policies are implemented. How did the two come together? Because there's a lot of deviant guys that are into child trafficking, rent a woman's womb, and they look uh, like the wonderful male couple. And meanwhile, we have no clue what's going on behind the scenes, but enough stories have come out. So that's my concern that here these women are in need. Um, it's just not normal for a woman to rent her womb out. But then these husband and wife, now again, doesn't give the actual genders, say they've given second thought and now they want her to terminate the pregnancy. When the one thing that she said in her application was, above all else, she's pro-life. So again, this kind of woke stuff creates all sorts of stuff. So you'll see a wide variety. I really hit perps hard. I really hit perp apologists hard. Anybody that shows deviance, I go after them. And it's really to give people hope, to really bolster those, because I've been in the field so long that hopefully it gives people confidence to know that, wait a second, okay, their intuition was right. So I really want to confirm people's intuition because that's what predators go after, right? If they can dumb down somebody's intuition, they've got them. That's what grooming is all about. And therapy actually brings back somebody's intuition.
Yes.
So there we go.
And I love that you stand up for people by being um what's the word? Or rather calling out perpetrators and sort of debating them. Like you're standing up for people who can't do that themselves, you know. So I like that you do that. You're so bold with everything.
I
You're
guess
like you're such a nice, kind person, but you're a fucking warrior at the same time.
I do have that side. Huh? My little Jimmy part comes out, and it is something that none of them will debate me. And I
It
don't do it
is.
out
Yeah,
of
it's very,
ego,
very telling, right?
right? All these academics, I've challenged them all because I have the live program on Friday nights on tecn.tv. It's live, right? It's like, come on my program. Wasn't it interesting? Nobody.
Nope.
So these guys are pushing these lies about minor attracted persons and that there's virtuous pedophiles, meaning those that haven't offended. That's a big one I go after. Just the trans deception. I'll challenge any academic within the sound of my voice. Come on my program. You want to tell me, you want to tell the world that this is legitimate. You want to try to push this lie. Matter of fact, I'll say, here's my phrase. The trans movement, called the trans deception. The trans movement, I'm going to choose my words very carefully. Maybe we can close on this, but ready? This should generate anybody. A standing invitation, anytime, anywhere. Right, let's go live. Is this. The trans movement is the world's greatest lie, scam, and scheme as far as a man-made psychological scam, scheme, and ruse that has ever been devised and foisted upon vulnerable youth and their families. Prove me wrong. And I'll prove you wrong because it didn't exist prior to 2005. And I've been in the field since 1992 and worked with the most troubled of youth. And I have the graphs and the charts to prove it, that this is a lie. Okay, it's gone on for 20 years. And I'm like the little boy who says the emperor has no clothes. So I want everybody to know, right? There's no such thing as trans. There's no trans kids. There's no trans people. What are there? There's wounded and confused people or perps that are going after these wounded kids for profit and prey. Bottom line, you don't help anyone, as I mentioned before, by sterilizing them and chopping off their body parts. And all the perps know it. And these pushers, okay, I'll end with this. The pushers of the trans deception cannot differentiate. And that's why they won't debate me. Because the very first thing I will ask anybody on camera is this. You tell me what the 9 red flag key clinical indicators of sexual abuse are. Tell me it now. You should be able to rattle those off if you're a mandated reporter. And if you're in the field of mental health, if you are a doctor, if you're in medicine, if you're in education, you're a mandated reporter. You have to take mandatory child abuse training. You should know those off the top of your head like this. Tell me it now. Sorry, I don't mean to be dramatic. It could come rattling right off. And if you're a clinician, you tell me how you differentiate between child abuse and those 9 red flag indicators that you're going to tell me first. And then we're going to take those 9 and you're going to tell me how you differentiate gender confusion because you're reframing all the indicators of sexual abuse as gender confusion. So I want to know how you differentiate, and I want to know when you would write a mandated report because you are mandated by law. And no one has ever taken me up on that offer. And then the second one is this, I will ask them, is a man who paints himself with silver and then glitter, who is naked, who takes a picture with a young child at a drag event, is that a criminal offense? And would that require a mandated report if you saw that child with that photograph in school? And no one pushing this crap has the guts to say exactly what it is, because if you didn't report that, I mean, that rises to the level of mandated report. And they're all cowards, all these that are pushing the trans deception. And that should make all of us very concerned because that means child trafficking, grooming and trafficking is going on in the trans deception. It's going on in churches. It's going on in the trans deception. So that's what should make us concerned. I digress, but sorry.
No, thank you for that. The work that you do is really important, and you do talk about, like, a lot of the topics that you talk about are things that other people won't, and I love that. I think that these are really good conversations to have, and you're definitely not the only one who feels that way, and you're providing a lot of free information to people who want to learn more, which I think this community does, so I encourage everybody to please go follow Jon's YouTube page and to go click on his website, Unmasking the Trans Movement. Give him some more followers. Go check that out. It is a really big epidemic that's going on with our kids. A lot of you guys have kids or have kids that have kids in school. And, we need to be aware that they're really, really pushing this right now. Even if you don't think they are, this is something that's impacting our youth tremendously. And Jon gives so much free information on that on his Survivor Support website, as well as his YouTube channel under Jon Uhler. I'll have all of that in the show notes. So much free information once again for your healing journey, more on what to expect from therapy, and so much more for survivors and for a therapist. So another thing that I would recommend for you guys is to, if you come in contact with therapists, send them Jon's channels, send them to his website, especially if they're curious or they do want to learn more. Just like how Jon's material can help you, it's also there to help therapists. So if you want to help your therapist and have somebody in your life that that wants to learn more, Jon's resources are a really great place to start for them. And it's very, very thorough. So I encourage you guys to please not only use it for yourself, but share with other people who would find value in it. We all know parents, we all know somebody in the medical field who could benefit from this, or somebody who's just a friend with survivors and who wants to know a little bit more about what's happening. So please share all of this, go engage with his content, follow him on Twitter to keep up. Like he said, he's constantly updating that every day. So you can get a good synopsis on YouTube whenever he posts on unmasking the trans movement. He's on Twitter daily. So if you guys want to keep in touch with what he's doing every day, go on there. You guys can see all the up-to-date articles and controversies that are coming out around pedophilia, the trans movement. He even posts about, human trafficking and things related to survivors. So you guys can go keep up with all the daily stuff there, and he's constantly researching. So I will have all of that in the show notes, you guys. I'll have all my platforms also and all my links. I always say follow us on every platform just in case, you never know. Jon's going to be writing some books soon, which is going to be great. We'll have stuff that can't get erased from the internet that we can use for a resource that he's creating. So I'm really excited for that, Jon, and can't wait to have you on to talk about that more whenever you get closer. And you guys, I'm so grateful for you. We couldn't do this without you. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.